everybody. This is not the Fearless TV for May 8th, but I just was running a little bit late and I forgot to change all that stuff in the live stream thing. I'll fix it probably when there's a video. You may have noticed that it's been a while since I've done one of these, and let's okay, theme music. You can, there you go. All right. It's been a while since I did one of these Fearless TVs, and the reason for that is because I crashed on my one wheel, and so that's sort of disoriented me a little bit. In the future, I'm not going to be doing these on Friday anymore, mostly because it's like 5:30 on a Friday on the West Coast. And everybody's done with work. They don't want to listen to Scrum stuff. And people on the East Coast, of course, they've already been pre-funking so they could go out because it's the weekend. And I would like to tell you that today's episode of Fearless TV is not brought to you by Ninkasi Megalodon beer, which is delicious. But if they wanted to, by the way, anybody from Ninkasi, if you're watching, feel free. I realize I'm endorsing you for free right now, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to get to my parking lot, and my parking lot's getting kind of crazy because, and I'll post the link in the comments, I decided that it might be cool to publish the link online, and then anybody who's ever taken my workshop, or even anybody who's ever watched this, could, post, and I might get questions that I wouldn't get from other people. So there's some interesting ones here. So we're going to take a look at what some of those are. Let's see here. This is a good one. Who does the Scrum Master report to? I don't care. I don't know why people are so concerned about this. Well, I do know why people are concerned about this, because we're used to working in these very, very top-down command and control power structures where the most important thing is who reports to who, mostly so that somebody is at a little bit higher level of the corporate ladder can know who to blame when stuff goes sideways. So I would say the Scrum Master probably reports to almost everybody because they're the one, that usually gets blamed for stuff. But in reality, if you're talking about who is the Scrum Master in service to, who do they work for? Well, the answer is obviously their Scrum team. So the product owner and the team members on the Scrum team. Their job is to be a servant to those people, to make sure that they understand Scrum, to make sure that the rituals or ceremonies or whatever weird words people are still using, I call them events because that's what the guide calls them, are happening properly and people understand what they're for. If you're talking about like a corporate reporting structure, I think that's something I would be less worried about. Now I realize that we often are, and you're like, well, Jimmy, we don't all live where you live in a super secret social distancing bunker in Portland, Oregon, where you do your workshops online because of COVID. We have real jobs. I understand that, but I just want you to think about whether adults who are highly skilled, have special training, a special education, and are dedicated to doing some job that they want to do those people need to report to a manager? I don't think they do. I think they need leaders to make sure that they have the right environment and the tools and skills and everything necessary. But do they need a manager? I would argue, and so would a number of people, I think that they don't. So who does the Scrum Master report to? If you want like sort of the real world, if I'm a Scrum Master, who's my boss going to be? Well, it's going to probably be somebody in the project management function of your organization, because honestly, organizations don't know any better, right? They don't understand that Scrum and other empirical agile approaches and traditional project management are completely unrelated, right? So my first experience as a Scrum Master, I was the leader of a PMO, right? So that didn't work out very good, by the way, because I had lots of power imbalances and I had authority over people, and you shouldn't be a Scrum Master if you do that. But probably you're going to be in a project management organization, unless it's a really advanced and mature agile organization, which there aren't very many of. And then they're going to answer this question the same way I did, which was, well, what do you care? Like, just do your job. Like, you don't need a manager. So that's my answer to that. And your mileage may vary. Okay. Here's another one that looks an awful lot to me like traditional project management environment. If a Scrum Master is assigned to multiple projects, how does he/she divide their time between those projects? Scrum doesn't care about projects. Projects are, in fact, I think we mostly live in a post-project world. And understand, I got my master's degree as an MBA in project management and took every project management course. When I had an elective, instead of taking something fun and interesting, I took another project management course, and I was, for 10 years, a traditional project manager all the way up until my last job in that last life was sort of running a PMO. So project, that's a different kind of idea, I would say. That is an idea where you would have people in an organization, separated by functional discipline, right? So you'd have some certain kind of developers over here, and you'd have some business analysts over here, and you'd have some testing people over here, etc. And then you'd find something that you wanted to do as an organization, and you'd assemble a team, a project team, to do that. Scrum isn't really for that kind of work, I would say, nor is much of that true anymore. Certainly not in technology and things, right? Everything's kind of more fluid now, and I think we need to move from like moving people towards the work to bringing the work to cross-functional groups of people. I mean, that's a big Scrum thing, right? You have a cross-functional team. It's assumed that that team stays together basically forever, and then you bring things to them that you need them to build. And if you're going to build something that only takes one of those teams, so be it. If you're going to build something that takes 2 or 3 of those teams, well, then there might be a little bit of extra complexity. But I haven't had too much trouble with it, at least once I got past all of my assumptions about how things worked. So if you're a Scrum Master and you find assigned to multiple projects, what I suspect the real question here is, I'm a Scrum Master and I'm supposed to serve multiple different Scrum teams. That's a violation of the rules. I mean, if you're going to do that, you shouldn't. I'm just saying, look, we're not doing Scrum. We're just pretending, right? And there are people that will disagree with me, people that have the same level of expertise and training and everything else. Those people happen to be wrong, but I think if you think a Scrum Master is just somebody who keeps track of charts and makes sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing, and sort of schedules meetings and clicks a timer, well, then sure, maybe I could see where that would happen. They're not going to be very good. That's not what a good Scrum Master is going to be doing. And none of those teams are going to get the service that they deserve and need. I want a Scrum Master assigned to a team, right? And they're that team's, servant. And they don't, it's not, a Scrum Master is not a project manager. And for some reason, and I understand why, right? This happens because the same thing happened to me. Like when you learn something new, when something new comes along, your first natural instinct is to try to figure out, well, how does this map to what I already know? And I did that. When I was leading a PMO, I saw Scrum. Actually, the kid that introduced me to it, I wanted to fire because, and if you've been in my workshop, you've heard this story. I wanted to fire him because he didn't do any of the stuff that I wanted him to do, right? He wouldn't get a PMP. I insisted on it. He wouldn't do earned value management. And of course, I was working for a company that did mostly government work, so you got to have earned value. Wouldn't produce a Microsoft project plan for me. Wouldn't do any of that stuff. He would just all I could tell was that, once a day, his developers showed up in the hallway somewhere, like by his cubicle or somewhere they'd meet, and then to have some kind of hippie love-in, kind of talking about stuff. It turns out that was an important event that I later learned to be called a daily Scrum, but at the time, I didn't know that, right? So I just assumed, I asked what Scrum Master is. When I saw that, I'm like, well, that's kind of like Project Manager, isn't it? So maybe it's the same. And I treated it the same. And I even had, at one point, what a lot of organizations do, said, okay, project managers that want to be in agile projects in this one little group of people that make software, which was not the, it was a publishing company I worked for, so it mostly wasn't that. Who wants to do that? Okay, you're not a project manager anymore. You're a scrum master now. That is very common, right? Because that's what we do. The problem is, I think we need to understand that this is a wildly different approach to doing work. And it's also a wildly different way to treat people, right? So if you don't understand why, you might want to attend one of my workshops. I'm doing, since this COVID thing, I'm doing them I'm doing them all virtually until markets start to open up and I can get out of my underground bunker. So come to a workshop, and you'll learn a lot more about that. And there's probably, I'm not the only person who does this. I'm not saying I am the best at it, but I'm not saying that. But there's some other people that are pretty good at it, so any of them are gonna help you figure it out. All right, I got time for about one more. Let's see. Oh, and this is a perfect. This falls in line, right? Let's do this one, because this is one I've never heard before, but I think it's in the same category. Does the product owner report to the Scrum Master? Report what? You mean is the Scrum Master in charge of the product owner? No. Is the Scrum Master and product owner kind of a tandem duo that have special roles on a Scrum team and they're each responsible for certain things? Yes. And do they talk to each other about those things? For sure. But reporting to, this whole concept of reporting to people, it just sounds very sort of 20th century Tayloristic. It's predicated on the idea that if you don't watch people, there's some deadbeats out there that are stealing money from the company by doing nothing. And somebody needs to watch those people. And so then the question comes up, is it the product owner that does that, or is it the Scrum Master? And the answer is no, it's none of them. Nobody does. Because first of all, that's not very common. It's a lot less common even than Taylor thought in the 20th century. And he was dealing with people that were doing a much different kind of work, right? He was circa 1910 is when he came up with scientific management and whatnot. And that's the basis of a lot of our traditional project management philosophy. It comes from that and from commercial real estate. And he believed, he had people that were, working in factories under terrible conditions for terrible wages with basically no significant benefits of any kind, like healthcare or any of that, because, again, it was pre-1950. So, if that's what the world that you're in, then somebody's got to keep track of who's doing what, etc., because it's the only way to make sure it happens. But for complex creative problem solving kinds of work, like Scrum is for, I mean, you're just not gonna have that issue. And if you do, in the rare instance, and I've been in technology field for, I think my first job was, 1993. I don't want to admit that. And then now you're saying, why were you on a one wheel? Anyway, that's a sidebar. In that whole time, I have rarely experienced a person who was just in technology, just there for the paycheck, a sandbagger, lazy, incompetent, just didn't want to do the job. But here's one thing I do know about the very few handful of people like that, and I bet it's fewer than 1%. Those people that are like that would need a manager to tell them what to do, first of all, they should just be let go, because they're not going to help a cross-functional team. Secondly, you know who's never going to find that person? A manager. Because there's a reason those people, the very few that exist, still have jobs. It's because they're super good at hiding from managers, right? It's like that guy from Office Space who was like, I usually show up about 10, but I come in through the back door so my boss doesn't see me. And then I space out in front of my computer for about an hour, but it looks like I'm working, right? Those people are never going to get caught by a manager. So you can waste... I've tried as a manager for years. I've at one point I had something like 170 direct reports, and I was constantly like, all right, where do I find the dead weight? You're not going to. So people reporting to people, which has been the theme of all of these questions that I've talked about today, is really misguided. And we need to start treating people with respect and trust. And I think assume that people are there to do the best they can with the skills that they have. The truth of the matter is, all people do the best they can with the skills they have. And I think in today's world, more than any other time, we really need to start treating people that way, right? And I've believed most of my life after 10 years of being a manager and traditional project management and stuff, and got more into agility, that we should just be good to everyone all the time, whether they deserve it or not, right? And the people that don't deserve it, they will fall away from you. And that's definitely true, in my opinion, as a sort of a Scrum-like value, right? We value people, and we believe that they want to do the best that they can, and we don't think that they need to be managed. They need to be helped, they need to be led, but they don't need to be managed. So nobody's going to be reporting to anybody. Product owner's not reporting to the Scrum Master. Scrum Master's not reporting to anybody. And probably don't have Scrum Masters be treated like project managers. And that's about it. That's about all I got for you today to get to. I got a bunch more stuff on my parking lot. I'm going to go through. I'm going to start doing these a little bit shorter because half hour, 45 minutes was too long. So I'm going to try to be as close to 15 to 20 minutes. Next week, I'm going to be doing it on a Wednesday at about 5:30. Definitely check out my website for all my upcoming workshops. That's fearlessaGility.com/calendar, and I'll put a link down in the comments section of the video that posts if you weren't here for the live broadcast. Anyway, all that being said, thanks very much for hanging out with me for a little bit. Enjoy your weekend. And good luck. Happy scrumming. I'll see you later.